He invited his ex to his wedding, just to flaunt his new bride and laugh at her misery, only to freeze when she walked in on the arm of an impossibly powerful, impossibly rich vampire lord. Now the man who once broke her heart has to watch as the woman he underestimated arrives more feared, desired, and untouchable than anyone in the room. And his perfect wedding turns into her ultimate revenge. If you had been there that night, you would have sworn this was just another rich, glittering wedding in the city. But behind the music and the flowers, one woman was walking toward the door with a secret husband and a plan her ex would never see coming. The hall shimmered with crystal lights and white roses, the air thick with perfume and whispered gossip. Aisha stood just outside the grand doors, fingers cold around the small clutch in her hand. The violin music inside floated out in soft waves, each note brushing against old wounds she had promised herself were finally healed. Yet her heart still pounded like it did the day Rayan left her. Beside her, the vampire lord waited so quietly that, for a moment, he seemed carved out of moonlight and shadow. His name was Lucian, and everything about him clashed with the bright wedding hall. The long silver hair tied back with black ribbon, the dark embroidered coat that looked centuries old, the heavy chain of gold and iron resting against his chest. Only his eyes burned with color, deep crimson, calm and watchful, like a sunset that refused to die. "You are trembling," he said softly, his voice low enough that the humming waiters and passing guests could not hear. "We can still turn around, Aisha. You owe this place nothing." She forced a breath and glanced up at him. "I'm not trembling," she lied. "I'm editing my memories." A corner of his mouth curved, just a little. Lucian rarely smiled, but when he did, it felt like a night sky opening to show a hidden star. "Then allow me to stand with you while you rewrite them." He offered his arm with an old-fashioned grace that always made her forget he was strong enough to break the doors with a fingertip. She slipped her hand around his elbow, and the wild beat of her heart slowed a bit. It always did when she was close to him. It was strange, she thought, that a creature who had once been called a monster could make her feel safest in the most human place she knew. From inside, the MC's voice echoed. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our bride and groom, Rayan and Mira." The hall erupted in cheers. Aisha's stomach twisted. For a second, the smell of roses became the sharp scent of alcohol and rain from another night, 1 year earlier, when her life had been ripped apart. 1 year earlier, the rain had not been romantic. It had been heavy and rude, falling in angry sheets that soaked through her thin sweater as she crouched on the edge of the broken pavement outside the café. Her mascara had already surrendered to the storm, and her phone screen glowed with the last message from Rayan. "I'm sorry, Aisha. My parents will never approve. Mira is a better match. Let's not make this ugly." He had not even said goodbye to her face. Cars hissed past, their headlights turning the street into a river of light. Aisha tried to stand, but her knees shook, and she sat back down on the curb, hugging herself. People walked by under umbrellas, glancing at her and then quickly looking away. To them, she was just another girl who had cried too long over something that would not matter in 10 years. To her, it felt like the entire map of her future had burned. "You will freeze if you stay there much longer." The voice came from the shadows beside the café, calm and strangely musical. Aisha rubbed her eyes and turned. At first, she saw only a tall figure in a long, dark coat, its collar turned up against the rain. Then lightning cracked across the sky, and for a heartbeat the world lit up. Pale skin, almost luminous. Eyes that glowed faintly red, not like blood but like the last coal in a dying fire. A face too perfect to be real, sharp cheekbones, a smooth, unreadable mouth. She scrambled to her feet, afraid she was seeing things. I'm fine," she stammered. "I just slipped." "If you were fine," he replied, stepping closer, "your tears would not taste like that." She froze. "Excuse me." He blinked as if surprised at himself, Forgive me, that was impolite, old habit. He lifted his gaze to the storm. Rain tends to bring out what people try to hide. A car suddenly skidded on the wet road, its wheels losing grip as it spun toward the curb. Aisha did not even have time to scream. The headlights rushed toward her, bright and merciless. She felt a cold wind, a blur of motion, and then the world snapped sideways. In the next instant, she was in the stranger's arms, standing safely on the opposite sidewalk. The car slammed into the curb where she had been seconds before, horn blaring, then rolled to a trembling stop. People shouted. Someone was yelling into a phone. But all Aisha could hear was her own ragged breathing and the steady, calm beat of the stranger's voice. "You are safe," he murmured, lowering her gently to her feet. His coat, though wet, had somehow shielded her from most of the rain. "Forgive the speed. I dislike watching people die." She stared up at him, her mind trying to catch up with what had just happened. "How did you?" He sighed, as if answering that question cost him something. "I am stronger and faster than I look, that is all." "That is not all," she whispered. "You moved like the scene was on fast forward and you were." He met her gaze, eyes now a quieter shade of red. "Do you wish the truth, Aisha?" Her name in his mouth made her blink. "How do you know my name?" He tilted his head toward the café behind her. "They called it when they asked you to leave the table. Rayan, Mira, the reservation you no longer needed." His expression softened, the distance in his face cracking just enough to show something human. "I am sorry you had to hear those words in such a public place." The memory struck like a fresh wave. Her chair scraped as Rayan stood, his fingers no longer twining with hers. Mira's shy smile, the way she had avoided Aisha's eyes. The quiet apology that solved nothing. "You were there?" Aisha asked, heat rushing to her face. "I was near," he replied. "I did not mean to listen, but pain has a sound, I hear it very clearly." Thunder rumbled overhead, softer now. The stranger reached into his coat and pulled out a folded handkerchief, an actual piece of cloth, not paper, embroidered with a tiny silver crown. He held it out. "You may cry into this," he said, "or throw it at me if it makes you feel better. Either way, I promise not to be offended." Despite herself, Aisha gave a small, wet laugh. Who even carries handkerchiefs anymore? "Men who do not change with fashion as quickly as the centuries do," he replied, with a hint of dryness that almost sounded like humor. "Centuries," she repeated, thinking she had misheard. "I speak too freely tonight," he said, as if scolding himself. "My name is Lucian. I am a king of sorts." "In this neighborhood?" she asked, glancing at the cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. "In this world," he answered quietly. "But do not worry. The title does not make me less capable of standing in the rain with a stranger." The word king should have sounded arrogant, but somehow it didn't. There was no pride in his voice, only a tired honesty, like a man admitting he had more responsibilities than he knew what to do with. "Right," she said slowly, "and I'm the queen of broken engagements." "Then we are a matched pair," Lucian replied. "Two royals on very bad nights." Another laugh escaped her, mixed with a sob. The absurdity of it all, her ruined evening, the near accident, this strange, formal man with impossible reflexes, pushed against the heaviness in her chest. "Why are you helping me?" she asked at last. "You don't even know me." He looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing how much truth the night could hold. "Because," he said, "some of us have spent a very long time being the reason humans are afraid of the dark. I have decided I would rather be the reason someone feels less alone in it." The wind eased. The rain softened to a drizzle. In the distance, sirens wailed, then faded. Aisha clutched the embroidered handkerchief and studied his face, searching for the cruelty Rayan's mother had always warned her about in men who were too different. All she saw was a deep, quiet sadness, and a patience that did not belong to any ordinary person. "Lucian," she said slowly, What are you?" His answer came without hesitation, as steady as his gaze. "I am a vampire king. I live where sunlight rarely reaches. I rule a court that most humans believe is only legend, and I am trying, very clumsily, to be kind." She should have run. She knew she should have. But somehow, standing there on the wet sidewalk, the word vampire did not feel as frightening as the word replaced had felt an hour ago. "You saved me," she whispered, "and you listened when you didn't have to." Lucian lowered his eyes, as if embarrassed by the praise. "Do not make me a hero for doing the bare minimum of decency." "The bare minimum doesn't usually arrive at lightning speed," she said, "or carry royal handkerchiefs." For the first time, his smile reached his eyes. "You are braver than you look, Aisha." "I don't feel brave," she admitted. "I feel empty." "Empty is what is left when someone smashes your expectations," he said. "It is not who you are. It is a room waiting to be filled with something better." She held his gaze, the rain between them turning to a thin silver curtain. "And what if better never comes?" Lucian stepped back just enough to bow, not dramatically, but with a gentle, old-world respect that made the broken pieces of her heart shift. "On behalf of better," he said quietly, "allow me to apply for the position of friend. I can listen. I can walk with you until the night hurts less. I can promise you that your story is not over because one man decided he was above you." His words settled inside her like a small, warm flame. For the first time that night, Aisha felt something other than pain, a fragile, stubborn hope. "Friend," she repeated, "just a friend." "I am many things," he replied, "but I do not force roles onto anyone. Friendship is already more than most offer to my kind." She studied his face, his poised stillness, the way he seemed ready to move away at the slightest sign of fear from her. "What if I'm too broken to be friends with a king?" she asked. Lucian's voice softened. "Then I will be the king who sits on the pavement beside you until you remember you can stand." The rain finally stopped. Neon lights reflected off the wet street, turning it into a river of color. Aisha took a slow breath and nodded. "Okay, King of the Night," she said. "You can walk me home." Months later, when the word friend had quietly grown into something neither of them dared to name, when late-night conversations in his hidden library had taught her more about courage and kindness than any self-help book, Lucian would ask her a different question. He would stand in front of her small apartment window, moonlight tracing the clean line of his jaw, and say, almost shyly, "Aisha, if you ever wish to return to the place where your heart was broken, you will not go alone. I will go as your shield, or if you permit it, as your husband." And now, 1 year after the rain, that promise had brought them here, to the entrance of Rayan's dazzling wedding, the air thick with music and secrets. Aisha's fingers tightened on Lucian's arm. Behind the doors, the crowd roared for the couple who thought they had already won. Lucian leaned closer, his voice a whisper for her alone. "Remember," he said, "we are not here to humiliate anyone. We are here so you can see, with your own eyes, that you did not lose your future that day. You outgrew it." She nodded, throat tight. "And if I can't do it?" "Then I will take your hand," he murmured, "and we will walk back into the night. You owe no one your pain." The wedding coordinator spotted them and hurried over, his eyes widening at Lucian's regal presence and Aisha's simple but stunning crimson gown. "You're the special guests?" he asked nervously. Lucian's gaze softened as he looked at Aisha. "She is," he replied. "I am only here to hold her crown in place if it slips." The coordinator blushed without knowing why, then pushed open one of the great doors. Light and sound exploded toward them. Dozens of heads began to turn. Aisha took one last breath of the quiet hallway. Lucian's cool hand closed gently over hers, his thumb brushing a silent promise across her skin. "Ready, my queen," he whispered. Her heart answered before her voice did. She stepped forward, crossing the threshold as the hall fell into a shocked, rising murmur. And in the very instant before Rayan's eyes met hers across the sea of guests, before the first gasp cut through the music, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what kind of woman walked into her past with a vampire king at her side. The man she lost, the king she chose. The music did not stop when Aisha and Lucian crossed the threshold, but it staggered for half a second, as if the violinist's hand had slipped. Hundreds of tiny crystal lights rained down from the ceiling, glittering over polished marble floors and tall vases of white lilies. For a heartbeat, the entire hall stared. Every table turned. The smell of roses and expensive cologne wrapped around Aisha like a wave. Rayan stood at the far end near the stage in a black tuxedo, Mira's hand tucked into his arm, both of them framed by an arch of soft pink flowers. His smile for the guests was wide and rehearsed, but when his eyes landed on Aisha, the expression shattered. His jaw went slack. Mira's fingers tightened around his arm, and she followed his gaze. Aisha watched the bride's face go from confusion to recognition to a quiet, stunned guilt. Rayan's parents, standing nearby in rich gold outfits, stared at Aisha as if she were a ghost who had not obeyed the rules of staying gone. Lucian did not flinch under all those eyes. He moved with calm confidence, guiding Aisha a little closer to his side as if shielding her from the shock. His long coat, lined in crimson, brushed the marble as they walked. Up close, he seemed even taller, his pale skin catching the chandelier light like polished stone. Yet the hand resting over Aisha's was gentle, his thumb tracing slow, steady circles against her knuckles. Whispers followed them, soft and sharp. "Is that Aisha, the girl Rayan? Who's the guy? He looks like some kind of prince. Look at his eyes. Are those contacts?" A waitress, balancing a heavy tray of champagne flutes, stepped backward to avoid another guest and nearly collided with Aisha. Before she could stumble, Lucian shifted. His free hand flashed out, taking the tray with effortless grace, the glasses barely clinking. He smiled kindly at the waitress and set the tray on the nearest table. "Careful," he said, voice low but warm. "Tonight is for celebration, not broken glass." The waitress flushed with relief. "Thank you, sir. I am so sorry." "No apology needed," he replied, dipping his head. "You carry more weight than anyone else here. That deserves respect, not blame." Aisha saw the girl's shoulders straighten a little as she hurried away. The small moment soothed something in her chest. Even in a room full of people staring, Lucian noticed the one person in danger of dropping everything. Rayan finally remembered to breathe. With a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes, he led Mira down from the stage to greet their special guests. The MC, grateful for something interesting to announce, grabbed the microphone. "Ah, we have a surprise tonight," he boomed. "Rayan's old friend Aisha has joined us, looking absolutely stunning, and she's brought her husband, I presume." Lucian's hand tightened just slightly around Aisha's. His voice was smooth when he answered, loud enough to carry. "Yes," he said. "Lucian Valerius. I have the honor of being Aisha's husband." Gasps rippled through the room. The word husband hung in the air like a spark looking for fuel. Aisha watched Rayan's face carefully, measuring every flicker of emotion. Shock, confusion, a flash of anger, then something smaller and uglier, hurt pride. He had invited her expecting her to arrive alone, wounded, easy to laugh at. Instead, she stood arm in arm with a man who made even the chandeliers look dull. "Aisha," Mira said softly, stepping forward before Rayan could speak. "You look beautiful." Her eyes were shining, and not just from the makeup. "I'm glad you came." The sincerity in her voice hit Aisha like an unexpected breeze. She had prepared herself to hate Mira, to see her only as the girl who had taken her place. But standing in front of her now, Mira looked nervous and kind, not like a thief, but like someone who had also been dragged into a story she hadn't written. "Congratulations," Aisha managed, her voice steady. "You look like the inside of a music box." Mira laughed quietly. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all night." Rayan cleared his throat, reclaiming the moment. "So," he said, studying Lucian with a forced smile, "this is your husband. We didn't know you were married, Aisha." "It wasn't your business anymore," she replied, the old ache twisting but not winning. "Life goes on, Rayan." Lucian inclined his head, his tone perfectly polite. "Thank you for inviting us," he said. "It is generous to share such an important day with those from your past." For a second, Rayan seemed almost disarmed by the courtesy. Then his gaze dropped to Lucian's ornate coat and the heavy chain at his throat, the faint red glint in his eyes. "Interesting style you've got there," he said lightly. "Very theatrical." Lucian's smile did not move. "The world is my stage," he answered, "but tonight I am only here as Aisha's companion. The spotlight is yours." The MC urged everyone back to their seats. As people returned to clinking cutlery and soft chatter, Lucian guided Aisha to a table near the center. A stray cousin slid aside eagerly to make space, clearly wanting a closer look at this mysterious husband. While dinner was served, music floated through the hall again, a slow, dreamy tune. Aisha watched the dance floor fill with couples, dresses swirling, laughter rising in little bursts. For the first time since she'd walked in, her shoulders loosened. Lucian leaned closer. "Would you like to dance?" he asked. "In front of everyone," she whispered, suddenly shy. "In front of no one who matters more than you do," he said gently. He stood and extended his hand like a scene from a different century. Aisha placed her fingers in his and followed him to the floor. As he drew her close, one hand around her waist, the world shrank to the cool, steady scent of his cologne and the soft rustle of his coat. "You're too calm," she murmured. "Everyone is staring, and you act like you're walking through your own garden." "In a way, I am," he said. "You are here. Where you are, I belong." Her cheeks warmed. "You're unfair." "Honest," he corrected. "But if it feels unfair, I will accept that punishment." They moved together in slow circles, her head resting briefly against his shoulder. A flicker of memory washed over her. A different night, under a sky full of stars above his hidden estate, when they had stood before a small circle of witnesses, human and vampire both, as he'd slid a simple silver ring onto her finger. "In my world," he'd whispered then, "a king is nothing without the one soul who tells him the truth when everyone else bows. Will you be that for me, even when the truth is heavy?" Now, here in the Hall of Old Mistakes, she squeezed his hand. "You're doing it again," she said softly. "What am I doing?" he asked. "Making it almost impossible to remember why I was ever afraid of you." Lucian's smile was small and real. "Good. Fear is a poor foundation for any story worth telling." As the song ended, applause rose. Lucian stepped back with a graceful bow and led her off the floor. They had barely reached their table when Rayan appeared at Aisha's side, his expression polite but tight. "Can I steal Aisha for a minute?" he asked, looking at Lucian as if expecting resistance. Lucian met his gaze calmly. "It is her decision," he said. "She is not something to be stolen." Aisha took a slow breath. Part of her wanted to refuse, to stay in the warm circle of Lucian's presence and ignore the past completely. But another part knew she had walked in tonight for a reason, not to wound, but to close. "It's okay," she said quietly to Lucian. "I'll be right back." Lucian nodded once, eyes searching her face to make sure she was truly willing. "I will be here," he said, "no matter what is said." Rayan led her toward a quieter hallway near the restrooms, where the music was only a soft vibration in the walls. For a moment, old memories tried to drag her backward. Secret smiles across café tables, shared playlists, the dizzy feeling of first love. She folded her arms, grounding herself. "You look different," Rayan said finally, studying her. "Stronger, I wasn't expecting." "You weren't expecting me to be okay," she finished. "You invited me to watch me break." He winced, then tried to cover it with a scoff. "That's dramatic." "It's the truth," she said. "Why else send that message after a year of silence? You should come, it would mean a lot." "It wasn't kindness, Rayan. It was a test you assumed I'd fail." He looked away, jaw clenched. "Maybe I wanted you to see that I'm doing well, that I made the right choice." "And did you?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Does it feel like the right choice?" He hesitated a second too long. "It doesn't matter, it's done, I just—" He stopped, then exhaled sharply. "Who is he, Aisha? Really? No one knows a Lucian Valerius. Where did you meet a man like that?" "In the rain," she said. "When you left me outside a café." He flinched again. "You still hold that against me?" "No," she said, surprised to realize it was true. "Tonight I don't. It hurt, but I lived." Rayan's eyes hardened. "You think he saved you? Guys like that always want something. Expensive clothes, mysterious aura, the whole I'm different act. You can't honestly believe he married you just because he loves you." Her heartbeat stumbled. "Why else would he marry me?" Rayan gave a short, humorless laugh. "Come on, Aisha. Look at him, look at you. This isn't a movie. Men with that kind of power don't just pick some heartbroken girl from the sidewalk. There's always a reason, a deal, an advantage. You're smart enough to know that." A cold seed of doubt slid under her skin. She thought of Lucian's strange titles, his hidden palace, the way some of his people whispered about prophecy when they thought she couldn't hear. She had always pushed those questions aside, trusting the warmth in his eyes, the steady way he listened, the gentleness in his touch. "What are you trying to say?" she asked, her voice low. Rayan studied her, seeing the hesitation he had wanted. "I'm saying you have no idea why he really married you, Aisha." The hallway seemed to tighten around her. The music from the hall swelled again, distant and cheerful, completely wrong for the crack appearing inside her chest. Before she could answer, a staff member called from the doorway. "They're about to start the speeches. Rayan, they need you on stage." He glanced toward the hall, then back at Aisha. "Think about it," he said. "Ask him. If he really loves you, he won't mind." He walked away before she could speak, leaving her alone in the soft, humming silence, Rayan's words echoing in the one place she had thought was finally safe. She turned back toward the hall, heart pounding, wondering if the man who had rescued her from the rain was hiding a storm of his own. The king's secret and the bride's choice. By the time Aisha reached their table again, Lucian was standing, eyes gently searching the room. The moment he saw her, the shadow of worry in his face eased. He moved to meet her halfway, ignoring the curious glances from nearby guests. "Did he upset you?" Lucian asked quietly. "Your heartbeat is unsettled." "You can hear that," she murmured, trying to steady her breathing. "I have spent a very long time learning to listen," he said. "To hearts, to fear, to hope. What did he say?" Aisha hesitated. Rayan's voice replayed in her mind. "You have no idea why he really married you." Part of her wanted to ask Lucian right there, to spill her doubt out onto the floor and watch it burn away under his answer. Another part feared hearing anything that might confirm it. "Later," she said. "They're starting the speeches." Lucian studied her for a moment, then inclined his head, accepting her timing. "Later," he agreed softly, "but not never. I promise to be your truth. I expect the same from you." His trust in her honesty, even when she was hiding something, hurt in a strangely beautiful way. They returned to their seats as the MC called for attention again. Glasses clinked. The room settled into a comfortable hush. Rayan walked onto the small stage, smile practiced, mic in hand. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "Mira and I are incredibly grateful." He went through the usual lines: gratitude to parents, jokes about wedding planning, a sentimental story about how he and Mira had met. People laughed in the right places. Mira smiled up at him, though Aisha noticed her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "And," Rayan continued, "I want to thank some special people who joined us tonight." His gaze slid across the room until it found Aisha, including an old friend who came even though she didn't have to. Dozens of heads turned toward her again. Aisha forced a calm expression. Lucian's hand brushed lightly against the back of her chair, a silent anchor. Rayan's smile took on an edge that only Aisha seemed to recognize. "You know," he said, "life has a strange way of working out. Sometimes we think losing someone is the worst thing that can happen, but later we see it was actually a blessing in disguise." A low murmur rolled through the crowd. Some guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing the sharpness behind the words. Mira's smile faded. Rayan lifted his glass. "So here's to blessings we didn't understand at first, to the people who taught us what we really wanted, even if they weren't meant to stay." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Aisha felt heat rise in her face, anger and hurt twisting together. Around them, a few people chuckled, the way people laugh when they're not sure if something is a joke or an insult. Lucian stood. He did it calmly, without slamming his chair or raising his voice, but the effect was immediate. The nearest tables fell silent first, then the others, until even the MC lowered his head as if the room itself were bowing. "May I add something?" Lucian asked, not raising his volume, yet every ear caught the words. Rayan blinked, clearly thrown. Sure, of course." He tried to sound gracious, but the mic wobbled slightly in his hand. "Our guest would like to say a few words." Lucian walked toward the stage with the quiet confidence of someone who had crossed battlefields and courtrooms and survived them all. His coat parted just enough to show the deep red vest beneath, embroidered with symbols that only a few in the world could read. When he stepped up beside Rayan and took the microphone, the hall felt smaller, as if every wall had leaned in to listen. "Thank you," Lucian said. "I will be brief." His gaze swept the room, not harsh, but attentive, as if memorizing every face. "I am new to your world of wedding halls and floral arrangements," he began, a small smile touching his lips. "Where I come from, we celebrate differently. But some things are the same in any land: love, family, and the way we speak about those who are no longer by our side." He glanced at Aisha, and in that look was such open, steady affection that several guests actually sighed. "When I first met Aisha," he said, "she believed she had lost everything. Someone had shown her that promises can break. That is a brutal lesson for any heart." Rayan's mother shifted in her seat. Mira's eyes glistened. "But," Lucian continued, "what impressed me most was not her pain. It was what she did with it. She did not become cruel. She did not wish harm on those who had hurt her. She grieved, yes, but she kept her kindness. She kept her ability to laugh. She even kept room in her heart for the possibility that one day someone might treat her as she deserved." He paused, letting the words settle. "That kind of courage," he said, "is rare. It is the courage to stay soft in a world that rewards hardness, to forgive yourself for trusting the wrong people and still dare to trust again." A soft murmur of agreement moved through the room. Aisha felt tears prick her eyes. Her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. "So," Lucian said, turning slightly to address Rayan without ever losing his poise, "when we raise a glass to the past, let us remember that every person in it is a teacher. Some teach us how love feels when it's real. Others teach us what we must never accept again. Both are valuable. Both deserve, at the very least, a measure of respect." He lifted his own glass, which a waiter had quietly pressed into his hand. "To Aisha," he said softly, yet the sound carried to every corner. For surviving what tried to break her, and for walking into this hall not to gloat, but to prove to herself that she is no one's almost or backup plan. And to Rayan and Mira, may you both have the courage to be as honest with each other in private as you are charming in public. The toast landed like a gentle but undeniable wave. Guests raised their glasses almost on instinct, some with small, thoughtful smiles. Mira stood first, eyes bright, and lifted her drink high.